And I'd now like to introduce Mike Zambelli. Mike Zambelli is the IRTC Group Executive for the Major Construction Projects Division. He oversees construction projects nationwide across the IRTC network. Mike is a chartered civil engineer and has more than 30 years of major construction experience. He has previously held executive and project leadership roles with Tier 1 contractors across Australia, including Lend-Lease, Boulderstone and Thiess. I'd like to welcome Mike.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you for the introduction, Paul, and thank you to the PWI for inviting me to present at today's convention. It's great to see so many familiar faces from the rail industry at the convention today. The rail industry is like a large family with lifelong partnerships that are formed, and everyone is happy to share their experiences and lessons with each other. I had the pleasure of working with Paul Ferris and Mark Harris over several years at Lend-Lease Engineering, so it's good to catch up with them again today. I've also worked with John Peastack 15 years ago, who presented today. We both worked at the Trackstar Alliance in Queensland, which was the first rail program alliance in Australia. And Tim Parker, who presented earlier today, I met recently to discuss Sydney Metro interfaces with the IRTC freight line to Port Botany. So there are some very familiar faces here today, which is great. In June this year, I started as the Group Executive for the Major Construction Projects Group at IRTC, as Paul just mentioned. So I'm relatively new at IRTC, but I've already learned a lot in the first few months. In particular, I've been really impressed with the company's commitment to continually improving our rail network through increasing emphasis on safety, efficiency and reliability. So who is IRTC? Well, we're one of the largest freight rail network managers in Australia. Every day across 5 states, our network transports intermodal containers, agricultural products, general freight and passenger services, as well as coal and minerals. We manage the transit of around 440 freight and passenger trains daily on an 8,500 kilometre network and employ more than 1,900 people around the country. We're all working to a common purpose: to improve Australia's productivity by making rail the mode of choice in the national logistics chain. To further explain who we are, what we do and why we do it, there's a quick video titled "We Exist to Keep Australia Moving." And I'm going to hand over to our AV gurus here to play our video.
Every journey begins with a person and a relentless passion. It begins with a first step and a vision that powers you forward. At IRTC, we're driven by our purpose to keep Australia moving. Moving with a belief that our nation can and will command a world-class rail freight system. We're an essential part of Australia's supply chain, unashamedly championing rail. For the businesses that rely on it, and for the good of our nation. Because this nation, our nation, deserves the best. So over the last few years, we've been evolving and will continue to do so.
IRTC is dedicated to modernising rail in Australia, and as part of this, we've developed some strategic priorities to help guide us forward as a business. And these include do no harm, where safety is and will remain our #1 focus, working better together by continually enhancing our systems and processes, excelling at our core business so we can help our customers excel at theirs, create our future service, which is about developing the capabilities we need to provide our future service offering, and deliver our key projects on time and on budget. Creating our future service is a particular focus area. We're really mindful of identifying and delivering what our customers want, a vision we call our network of the future. We know that our network of the future must be resilient, responsive and digitally enabled. We also know that increasing innovation in the freight and logistics sector offers increasing avenues for disruption. So we're in the process of preparing our business to harness these new opportunities. Technology will play a pivotal part in our sustained long-term prosperity as a business, as will ongoing investment in rail infrastructure to meet the future demand. Looking at the value of rail freight in Australia, it might surprise you that rail carries 5 times more bulk freight than road, and it contributes to 56% of the national freight task, and that rail will move 72% of the growth in freight expected by 2030. At IRTC, we've known this for some time, so over the past 15 years, and with the support of the Australian Government, we've invested more than $8 billion into our network to deliver key infrastructure projects essential to the nation's economy. And there's much more to come. Our most notable project is Inland Rail, which many of you would be familiar with. But for those who aren't, Inland Rail is a 1,700 kilometre project that will enable 24-hour freight transit between Melbourne and Brisbane. The track will enable the use of double-stacked 1,800-metre long trains with a 20-tonne axle load at a maximum speed of 115 kilometres an hour. Each train will be able to carry the equivalent freight volume of 110 B-double trucks, which is good for safety, efficiency and for the environment. Regarded as a once-in-a-generation project that will complete the backbone of Australia's freight network in the eastern states, Inland Rail is being built to industry best practice standards and will help deliver a step change in the freight rail sector. It's going to transform how everyday goods travel around a country as big as ours, and for businesses and producers, particularly in regional areas. If you're a grain farmer or a cotton farmer, for example, it's going to cut freight transit times and increase volumes, making the cost of transporting goods even more competitive. For instance, the North-West connection that we've just completed at Parkes in regional New South Wales will link Brisbane, Melbourne and the East-West line to Perth and reduce freight rail distance between Brisbane and Perth and Brisbane and Adelaide by approximately 500 kilometres. Spanning 3 states, Inland Rail is a massive project and IRTC is pleased to say that we're making good progress. Last year we completed the alignment from Parkes to Narromine in regional New South Wales, which is the first of 13 individual sections to be completed, all of which we continue to progress through detailed planning and design into construction. Currently, in partnership with Transform Rail, which is a joint venture between contractors John Holland and Sea Civil, we're full steam ahead constructing the Narrabri to North Star section, including upgrading the existing rail corridor and building new track near Moree. And we recently took another major step towards construction of Inland Rail in Queensland, announcing a joint venture agreement for the project's Northern Civil Works program, the BHQ JV, which comprises Bilby Holdings, JF Hull Holdings and QHM and Burt, will help us deliver civil works for more than 160 kilometres of rail. And that's the corridor between the border to Gowrie of Inland Rail. And that includes 30 bridges and about 900 concrete culvert cells. We're also progressing plans to appoint a partner through a public-private partnership or a PPP to deliver the 128 kilometre Gowrie to Kaguru section in Queensland, which is the most technically complex of the 13 sections. It requires the construction of a 6.2 kilometre tunnel through the Toowoomba Range, as well as numerous viaducts, bridges and crossing loops to build a new dual-gauge track traversing Toowoomba, the Lockyer Valley, Ipswich and the Scenic Rim. Through the PPP, the private sector will design, build, finance and then maintain this section of the track. So the momentum for Inland Rail is definitely building, and just last month IRTC announced 2 additional key partnerships that you may have read in the news. The first with Freight Connect, a consortium led by Laing O'Rourke and including the FKG Group, to deliver civil works valued at $1.2 billion between Narrabri in northern New South Wales and Wheatstone in southern Queensland. And the second, a similar $1.2 billion partnership with Athiona and CPB contractors to deliver civil works for a 306-kilometre section of greenfield alignment between Narromine and Narrabri in northwest New South Wales. So these two partnerships alone, worth a combined $2.4 billion, are an example of the scale of inland rail, as well as the enormous number of jobs and local investment being created in regional areas. In fact, in total, inland rail is set to boost Australia's GDP by more than $18 billion and will support work for more than 21,500 people at the peak of construction in 2023 and 24. In terms of other major construction projects, another key focus for IRTC is our Botany Rail duplication and Cabramatta Loop, both in Sydney, which represents another $400 million investment in rail to meet predicted freight demand. Earlier this year, we announced John Holland as the successful contractor to design and construct the Botany Rail duplication, which will duplicate the remaining 2.9 kilometre section of single line track between Mascot and Botany. And then at the same time, we announced Fulton Hogan as the successful contractor for our Botany Loop project, which is a 1.7 kilometre section that will allow freight trains up to 1,300 metres in length to pass each other while travelling in either direction on the southern Sydney freight line. These two infrastructure projects are very important, as the freight task at Port Botany is predicted to increase by 77% by the year 2036. So these works will not only increase freight capacity to meet this future demand, they'll also help us shift freight away from road transport and reduce the rate of growth in truck movements and traffic congestion. In fact, each freight train on the Port Botany rail line will take up to 54 trucks off Sydney roads, which will be a big win for traffic, safety and reducing carbon emissions. The construction works on both the Botany Rail duplication and Cabramatta Loop project are scheduled to commence early next year. We're also progressing various other major construction projects on behalf of the Australian Government to further strengthen our national rail network. This includes the $235 million North East Rail Line upgrade in North East Victoria to ensure a smoother ride for passengers and fewer delays between Albury-Wodonga and Melbourne. We recently completed main track works on the North East Rail Line, delivering works ahead of schedule. This included the upgrade of 530 kilometres of track with 85 level crossing renewals and 142 rail bridge upgrades, all of which helped inject $70 million into the regional Victorian economy. And we're working on various other major projects that include our Southern Highlands Overtaking Opportunities project, which will improve track and signalling infrastructure to allow freight trains up to 1,800 metres long to be overtaken by the faster services. It encompasses up to 3 separate locations between Macarthur on the southwestern outskirts of Sydney and Joppa Junction south of Goulburn. And tenders for that project will be issued soon, with the construction to commence around mid-next year. There's also the Narrabri to Tarrawin line upgrade, which will boost efficiencies and freight volumes between Inland Rail and the Hunter Valley. And again, tenders for the project will be issued soon, with construction to commence around mid-next year. We're also planning enabling works in the support of Melbourne Airport Rail project in Victoria, which includes relocating the ARCT tracks and supporting infrastructure. So we have a solid pipeline of projects, which is also going to provide an increasing number of new opportunities for our industry partners, including contractors and suppliers, who we rely on to help us deliver all of these projects. If you're after more information about working with IRTC in the future, just simply go onto our website. In developing these projects, we're also working closely with above rail operators, freight forwarders and major freight owners to further integrate rail into the supply chains to provide an even more efficient, secure and cost-effective way to move goods across the country. Intermodal freight allows our customers and their customers, that is freight owners such as Woolworths, to enjoy the benefits of all modes of transport. We continue to look at the ways to best use intermodal terminals and port rail connections to maximise productivity in Australia's freight network. Efficient intermodal terminals in Melbourne and Brisbane will be crucial for us to fully realise the benefits of inland rail. Our Botany Rail duplication and Cabramatta Loop project will serve the Moorebank Intermodal Terminal in Sydney, which is anticipated to move 1.5 million shipping containers annually by rail instead of road. Whilst IRTC's broader activities are to improve the safety, reliability and efficiency of rail as a modern mode of transport, IRTC also has a firm focus on new technology and innovation. We continue to develop some exciting technologies, spearheaded by our groundbreaking Advanced Train Management System, or the ATMS. ATMS is a communications-based train control system that precisely tracks trains using GPS and mobile telecommunication technologies. Developed in conjunction with Lockheed Martin, our ATMS was successfully deployed on our Port Augusta to Whyalla line in South Australia last year. And Stage 2 of ATMS is set to be deployed between Port Augusta and Kalgoorlie to broaden the rollout of the ATMS across the country. In pursuit of a rail network that is resilient, responsive and digitally enabled, I struggle with that digitally, we also continue to develop our IRTC Network Control Optimisation Program, otherwise known as ANCO. ANCO combines network-wide planning information with real-time system data to monitor performance and dynamically adjust the live train schedules. Currently, our ANCO technology is in place on our Hunter Valley network, and it's realising major improvements in supply chain productivity. Another technology initiative is our Asset Management Improvement Program, or AMIP. So that's the last and third four-letter acronym I'm going to ask you to remember. The objective of AMIP is to help our transition from historic time tons decision making towards evidence-driven, data-supported risk and condition methodologies. So importantly, our Asset Management Improvement Program will enable us to more readily meet the changing needs of our customers and focus on high-value preventative maintenance. If anyone would like more information on those initiatives, I'm very happy to put them in contact with our relevant program leads at IRTC. The theme of the convention today is Rail to Recovery, and this presentation was on building a stronger freight future. So you may be wondering, how's the COVID-19 pandemic impacted IRTC and what have we learned? And we had some great speakers earlier just talking about their experiences. The pandemic has well and truly demonstrated just how crucial rail is to the nation's supply chain. As part of Australia's freight and transport industry, IRTC has played our part in keeping trains moving to help keep supermarket shelves stocked for Australian consumers. Everything from food, clothes, medicines, and dare I say it, plenty of toilet paper has continued to move across our rail network since the outbreak of the coronavirus early last year. We've also helped ensure that Australia's key commodities have continued to reach domestic and export markets to underpin our national economy during such a challenging time. There have been three main things that we've had to do to respond to the COVID crisis over the past 20 months. Firstly, the government and health advice, as a businesses and as individuals, we've closely followed advice and direction from the federal and state governments and health authorities to help provide as much consistency and as possible for our people and customers and stakeholders across our whole network. Secondly, we've done everything possible to protect our people and our communities. Throughout the pandemic, we've continually reviewed and implemented our response measures with the health and well-being of our people at the forefront of our thinking. And thirdly, we've maintained normal business operations as much as possible. It's been really difficult, but as you can imagine, our network has had to overcome some obstacles and remained operational throughout the pandemic to underpin Australia's supply chain and keep people in work. Our business continuity plans included moves to isolate our critical business functions, including our network control centres, for which we've established backup facilities to safeguard against any outbreaks of the virus. So in closing, as a business and indeed as a rail industry, I think we've all done a great job throughout the pandemic, and as a collective we should be really proud of what we've achieved. We have a fantastic opportunity to capitalise on the resurgence in rail in Australia. With ongoing innovation and investment in major infrastructure projects, we can keep growing the volume of freight on rail and ultimately create a stronger industry for the good of the country. So thank you for everyone attending today and listening to the IRTC story. And I'd also like to thank the PWI for the opportunity to tell this story. And I'll hand back to Paul Ferris.